Hello everyone, we are here to do another video, hence the same outfit. But an article caught my attention in HYPERALLERGIC, and there was a magazine called Borough 24/7 that was published on Martin Luther King Day. And ironically. And it featured a woman known as Dasha Jakova. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, but she was sitting on a chair, and the chair was designed to look like a black woman in BDSM, and she is sort of like bent over, like on her back.
So essentially just like a chair.
Like she's on her back, and her legs sort of create a chair, and there's like a mattress on the back of her thighs.
Like with her butt area.
And she's sitting on it. And we'll post a link so you guys can see exactly what we're talking about. But there is a white woman sitting on the chair, and her name is Dasha Jakova. She is an heiress, and she is, I guess, some sort of woman who is relevant to the art world in some way, shape, or form. But this is the first I've heard of this woman, but that's neither here nor there. The chairs were designed by Bjorn Melgaard, who is using the chairs to sort of pay an homage to someone named Alan Jones, who was a sculptor from the 1960s. But the only difference is Bjorn, is making the chairs black women instead of white women like Alan Jones did in the 60s. And essentially the furniture that is being showcased is used by women. Like there'll be a woman on all fours, and there's like a glass table on top of her, and it's supposed to be functional, but it's supposedly supposed to address, I guess, certain gender constructs that were being addressed in society back then, because this is the 60s when these things were first being addressed, and times were a lot different than they were back then. But people were sort of concerned that she was just using them as a fashion statement versus actually trying to say something relevant. So I guess we want to use this article as a way to talk about being people of color, making artwork in a dominantly white environment, in a dominantly white arena. And I've received questions from other black people saying, especially like if I paint a white individual, and I will be asked oftentimes, why isn't this person black, or why haven't you painted black people, which is not true. And they see like one painting that you are working on, and all of a sudden they are so pressed to figure out like, why isn't this person black? Like why? I mean, I guess you can say they don't relate to it, this person doesn't relate to it. But I don't want to necessarily pigeonhole myself to say that I only paint this race of people. So how do you tend to respond to this?
I mean, there's so many artists already that paint specifically a specific race, and for me, I mean, I'm to a point where I feel like some people just kind of like they're overly dramatic about it. And for me, I think if the artist is being honest and is just coming from just like, I'm not painting them necessarily because of race, but they're just beautiful people.
Exactly.
It's like I paint white people because I think they're beautiful, not necessarily me. But when my high school work, when I did a lot of realistic paintings of figurative work, a lot of people ask me why I've never painted an Asian person, and you know, that was a good question, because that's something that's never like really in high school never really came to my attention, how something like that would be such a pertinent question. And when I thought about it, it was not necessarily anything about race. It was just
like
kind of
you weren't trying to shade anybody.
No, and I feel like a lot of people who don't know exactly what an artist is thinking, because at the end of the day, you don't know, you're not in the studio with the artist, you don't know what they're necessarily thinking. You don't know how many years they have researched and just sketched. You just don't know. And I think a lot of people tend to come to a conclusion that it's offensive, and
or self-hatred
of some sort. And I don't think that's, I mean, I just don't think it's fair. And kind of with you, if you paint only white people, or if you only paint black people, if I'm only painting white people, I mean, honestly, I don't think it matters. I mean,
yeah, because I feel like people sort of expect you to expect like a certain level of not a certain level, but expect certain things out of you because of who you are as a person. Like, because I'm black, am I supposed to like do a Kehinde Wiley and only paint black people? That's not what I want to do. Or because you're Asian and you're a woman, like, are you supposed to only do stuff like Zheng Huan, only paint Asian people? But and personally, I also feel it also ties into like how we're trained academically, because when you look in the history books and you don't really see like people of different races, so it's almost feel like it can be instinctual.
It's like unconscious.
Like it's unconscious. Like, okay, I'm going to paint a man. Like, you almost 9 times out of 10, like, this person might be white, but like I'm not doing it in like a way to shame my own race or not acknowledge the fact. But I like nowadays in my own work, like I tend to put myself and like I tend to put more interracial like scenarios in my paintings now, because I feel like it speaks to more audiences now. Like, and she's gone more non-representational.
Yeah, I started to switch off into abstraction and kind of playing around with that. And you know, I was never insecure about what people would ask, like, why haven't I ever painted an Asian person? That it was never something that I was ever concerned of. I'm doing non-representational paintings now because I'm genuinely interested. I took a color abstractions class and it's really opened my eyes to a different way of painting. And I guess like at some point faces and weren't doing what I wanted them to do, so it was time for me to move on. And it's just like a new series of body of work where I can just kind of explore and experiment, and who knows where that will take me, you know? But the whole racial issue, I mean, there's some things that I feel like people just kind of overhype. They hype it up too much. And I'm just like, wait a minute, before you hype it up, like, just kind of like, just look at it and just like, and just think like maybe this person's not trying to be, you know, racist in any way, you know? And it's hard because it's like, oh, well, this is a white person. And it's like,
and I feel like
doing a black person painting or something. And
I feel like a lot of times, I feel like white people back in the 60s, like someone like Alan Jones, I feel like he received backlash like that too, because he was a white male creating furniture of white women in these provocative poses who are on all fours, who are in lingerie, who are in BDSM outfits. And I feel like stuff like that sort of pushes the boundaries and sort of either can stir up controversy or just be shocking, I guess you can say. But who's to say what his intentions are? But that's something he was consciously trying to do, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. And there's so many things about art that can be controversial. It's not just race. There's so many other things that people will take. Honestly, anything that anyone does that's not like, I guess, kosher, like people tend to like all of a sudden have a voice.
Yeah, if it's not something that they sort of expect them to do, it's like, well, you're an Asian woman, so I expect you to do art that's within these parameters. Or you're a black male, so I expect you to do art within these parameters.
Like, embrace your heritage. And it's like, just because I'm not painting Asians or he's not painting black people doesn't mean that we don't embrace who we are or where we come from.
Who we are as individuals or where we come from. I am very proud to be black. So.
Yes.
And then it also goes into situations like Miley Cyrus and Little Debbie and Lily Allen, who also did music videos featuring black women twerking and black women who are used as props, as I've heard some people say. And it sort of goes into white privilege and sort of like, oh my God, you are a white person who can go back to being a white woman or being a white man who is using these people of color as some sort of just prop or something that's for your amusement. But some people don't necessarily even think about it that way and don't necessarily think of the repercussions of their actions or using this person just as a visual trending thing on your whatever video or two-dimensional painting that's hanging on the wall. So
exactly. I'm just kind of indifferent. I mean, what do you think about this specific work that showed up?
Are you talking about this?
Yeah.
What do I personally think about
Like, what do you personally think? Do you think it is kind of like, it's horrible?
Like, I don't even, for personally the work, I feel like it sort of pushes the boundaries. It's neither here nor there for me. It's not necessarily something I would necessarily have in my house. It's not necessarily something that I would own, but I could sort of see, I guess you can say, the cultural I guess you can say I can sort of understand how it sort of pushes boundaries and how we think about race. I'm not necessarily sure what Bjarne's intentions were with the pieces. If he had malicious intentions, I'm not aware of these things. If he had genuine intentions, I'm not aware of these things. I'm seeing these pieces completely out of context in a magazine article, not necessarily in a gallery space. If I were to walk in and see these in a gallery space, I would almost think it was kind of amusing. I wouldn't necessarily, but knowing the fact that he is a white male making these pieces, I'm not sure if I would feel neither here nor there about I'm not sure if I would feel neither here nor there about these pieces. I'm not someone who gets too offended about certain things of this issue unless it's like blatantly in my face. And personally, I think stuff like that challenges how people see race. So I feel like it's sort of like presenting a challenge and forcing people to think about certain things.
Right.
And it's sort of, I kind of, if you even look at the anthropology of how this sort of affects people and gets people to talk about it, it sort of like makes us look back on ourselves socially and how we address other people in certain races and how we address them in a certain way. So I'm not sure if that even made any sense, but I tried to give it. What do you think?
Yeah, like kind of like, I mean, when you first see it, what comes to mind is like, wow, this is kind of offensive. But then after that thought goes by, I start to think as an artist and kind of like, you know, I don't know exactly what this person is thinking. I don't know, like you said, if it's malicious or they genuinely think this is like an aesthetic that can push boundaries on how people think. And I can respect that if that's where that person's coming from. Like physically, just looking at the work, of course it's offensive. I mean, it's a black person propped as a chair and a white woman sitting in it. Of course, we're all gonna think that's like, wait a minute, you know, because we know the history of black people, what they went through.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like someone doing a piece about the Holocaust. You know, it's just like, it hurts, you know, or it's just
it forces you to think about things people don't necessarily want to think about. People want to go back into their daily lives and sort of just, especially when it comes to ideas of white privilege and people who don't acknowledge their white privilege go back into doing their daily routine and don't necessarily think about what advantages they have in the society that we live in. So when people are sort of forced to think about these things, it sort of makes people uncomfortable, which is sort of what art is supposed to do in the first place.
Exactly. I think it's supposed to push boundaries. I mean, for all we know, maybe this person did this purposefully for us to think of it as an offensive thing. We don't know. I don't know. I haven't sat down and really asked the artist. I'm probably never gonna know. And it's just like, that's the fun thing, because it's like you can see anything as like a racist thing or something that's like, oh, it just makes me really uncomfortable. Someone can do a dot painting and people will be like, this is just stupid. I'm just like, well, what's the difference between that and someone doing a piece like this, you know?
Yeah, and like especially our freshman year of college, like we were constantly asked in our theory classes, like, what is art? And essentially like the conclusion that I came to, if they call it art, then it's art. If it's in a space where it's being appreciated as the object that it is, then just be what it's going to be, and they have to suffer the consequences of how people see it. I mean, and they're still going to do what they're going to do at the end of the day.
You can't say, because like a lot of people hate on Duchamp because of like the toilet piece.
Yeah, the fountain pen, the piece.
People don't think like, oh, that's art, but I'm like, he called it art and it's art, you know what I mean?
And at the end of the day, like Duchamp pushed boundaries and got people to think like, well, if you're going to, is art going to be something academic, like figures on a painting that is rendered with minerals that gets mixed with oil and put on a canvas? Is it going to be just that, or is it going to be sculptures in clay? Well, he did all those ready-mades, and Jeff Koons does the ready-mades too, and like he just had them up, was like, okay, question this. And I totally appreciate that. And oftentimes these are artists that we may not like, but at the end of the day, we appreciate what they did and what they did to, I guess, sort of stimulate how we think, because it's not necessarily going to be like peaches and cream the whole way there. Sometimes you're gonna get some spider legs in there.
Exactly. You just don't know.
You don't know.
And I mean,
and I appreciate that.
Exactly. I appreciate the disturbing aspects of art, like just something that makes you question things. Like, I mean, kosher painting, sculpture, I mean, that's all good and that's fine, but it's like, is to push boundaries and see how far you can really go with something, you know? There are no rules in art. No one can tell you not to do something. If you have a place, you have the money to fund it.
If you want to light yourself on fire, at the end of the day, these people get the exposure, and it gets the exposure that art, I feel, deserves to have. I mean, because of this, I know who Bjarne Melgaard is, and I looked into who Alan Jones was, and I would have never looked into these people until I've seen this in this article. So, I don't know. I feel like it sort of pushes the boundaries and sort of gets people to think about things they wouldn't necessarily think about and get people a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't hate it. I don't love it. I think it's just something that's, I think it's beautiful in its own right.